Hello, everybody. Welcome to Relax with Animal Facts. I am Steph Wolf, and I'm here to learn some facts with you today about our furry, scaly, or perhaps slimy friends, while relaxing and sometimes going a little bit off topic. So you might hear me say a few. For any of you guys that are new, you might hear me say or those are sometimes my fallbacks when I'm trying to kind of find the right kind of words for what I'm trying to describe. But this podcast is where me and you go on a journey together to, different parts of the world or different kind of ecosystems and habitats to learn about some animals that maybe you didn't know so much about, or maybe you know about, and maybe me talking about this, maybe I'm talking about your favorite animal. And you can see if you know what I'm going to say before I say it for some of the facts, right? So there's a few different ways to listen to the podcast. It seems as though the majority of you guys out there like to play this podcast kind of as you're getting ready for bed. Maybe you're kind of winding down at the end of the day. So you can put on the podcast. You can space in and out if you're just trying to have something to go to sleep to. That is. Completely invited. The podcast is about 30 minutes, so I'm going to be here with you for 30 minutes. And we also have, right now, as of this recording, have like 5 or 6 other podcasts, so you can just, let them play if you'd like, so for a few hours there. But you can, sit on a comfy chair, you can be walking around outside, you can be, you can lay down on a comfy couch somewhere, and just listen. You can be attentive, you can space in and out, as I said before. It is all up to you. So for any of you new guys out there, I don't know, obviously there's so many animals out there, so many different species, and this podcast is for me to learn with you. So how it works is I go online, I get a good amount of facts, and I explore the animals with you guys. Using kind of a more neutral tone of voice, I might start feeling, some of these animals, like excite me because I love animals, and sometimes there'll be an animal that I'm passionate about to some degree. Today we're covering the African, or not the African elephant, but the elephants in general. African elephant is a species, but elephants in general. So these I've seen are very popular. People love elephants. They're very charming, super unique, very, very unique animals. They have so many unique characteristics that make people be very drawn to them, and I completely understand why. I'm going to be exploring that in just a sec. So before I get into the facts, I always say where I'm getting these facts from. In this case, I often get my facts from discoverwildlife.com. And that's where I got the majority of my facts here. And I also got some facts from mentalfloss.com. Okay? And if you hear anything that you actually know about that you may think is inaccurate, you can always shoot me an email at relaxwithanimalfacts@gmail.com, and we'll clear it up on the next podcast. So thank you guys for listening, and let's get into the show. So first, let's talk about some elephant species. So there is the African bush elephant, or the African savanna elephant. Those names are sometimes used interchangeably. And the Asian elephant. Now, some taxonomists propose that African forest elephant is a separate species to the African bush or the savanna elephant. And others believe that there may even be a third African elephant species with an additional one that's called the West African elephant. Now, there are actually some important distinctions between the different species. So there are some extinct elephant species out there, and a word I actually haven't seen before, they described these elephant species as extant or extant. And that means that they're not extinct, that they're still alive. And I've never seen that word actually used in context before. So I was like, what is extant? Did they misspell something? But no, it's actually extant. Means that it's actually still living. So if that's a little fact, it's more of a word fact than it is an animal fact. But there you go. But let's talk about the African elephants are closely related, but the Asian elephant is in fact actually quite distinct from each other, or from the African elephant. So with tusks, both male and female African elephants grow long tusks, but only male Asian elephants do in the Asian elephant population. Some female Asian elephants grow what are called tushes, so they're not full tusks, but they're very very small, barely visible and kind of stumpy sort of tusks. So that could be something that is a defining characteristic. The general size of them in general. So African elephants are larger. So we'll get into the weight and the height in just a second, a little bit soon. But let's say with the head too. So African elephants have more of that rounded sort of shape to their foreheads, while Asian elephants have twin domes on their heads with an indent in the middle. So these are kind of hard to describe characteristics, but again, as I've said in the previous podcasts, if you guys ever hear about an animal that you get curious about and it sparks that kind of passion in you, maybe the next day after you get some rest, or if you're being attentive in the middle of the day, you can always look more into animals because that passion, I think, is awesome. So if you want to see what they actually look like, you could always Google it in your spare time. So the ears of the African elephant are actually much larger than that of the Asian elephant. The African elephant's ears extend above the shoulder, so very, very large ears. Not to say that the Asian elephant's ears are small, but just smaller in comparison. And it's said that the African elephant actually has ears that are very similar to the shape of Africa. And while the Asian elephant has ears that kind of look like India. Those are little cool things there. Whether that's consistent across all elephants, I'm not exactly sure, but they say that on average that's kind of what the general shape looks like. And the trunk. Okay, so the trunk. With the tip of an African elephant's trunk has two lips, as they say. I think they're referred to more as fingers, but two lips. And the Asian elephant's trunk only actually has one. So, these actually have very defining characteristics. I think that you don't actually have to have that trained of an eye to really see the difference between these two. It might be hard if you see them in the wild not standing next to one another because, size is all, the size is all kind of relative because they all just look like very... these are the largest land mammals in the world. They're very, very big, so it might be actually hard if they're not standing next to each other to say, okay, this one's Asian elephant, this one's African elephant. So the back of the African elephant is actually concave. So describing this in a way, so it's kind of like the letter U, not, just like the letter U. This isn't a camel's back we're talking about. So what that means is that if you just take the letter U and you kind of stretch it out really far, so it still has that dip, but just it's not as sharp of a dip. It just means that's what concave means, is that if it's like if it has that U shape to it. Well, the Asian elephant's back is actually slightly convex, so that's the opposite. So that's kind of a dome shape. So it's kind of a little bit, that little hump sort of structure. Again, not like a camel, but it's just a distinction between having a U shape and kind of a one of those maybe McDonald's arches or something like that. So elephants are mammals, and what that means is that they nurse their young with milk, and they actually have hair all over their body. You might not actually, when you look at an elephant, they look kind of like leathery, and they look pretty hairless, but they do have hairs that are sort of few and far between. I think the right word for it would be kind of sparse, dispersed. They don't really have that winter coat like their distant ancestor, the woolly mammoth there. And of course, they are warm-blooded vertebrates. Okay, so they're not invertebrates and they're not cold-blooded. These are very large animals. And with that size, they also have the privilege of being incredibly intelligent. So this is something that's a very defining characteristic of elephants, and I think that's a more well-known fact about elephants. Right behind kind of the great apes, so you're looking at like gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, bonobos. the elephants are said to be kind of next in line in terms of land mammals and being intelligent. I have a bunch of kind of things that show their intelligence here. So the first one is that they can actually use tools, and they can use them pretty well. I remember a long time ago, a few years ago, there was videos of elephants painting with paintbrushes, and that really struck a chord with a lot of people, because here you have an elephant just expressing itself onto a canvas, and this is so rare in species, that they would have never done this, and if humans weren't around, obviously, but seeing that they have this capacity to kind of like create and have fun onto a canvas with something new is something that strikes a chord with me, and I think strikes a chord with a lot of people. It really shows, some of those human characteristics in these animals that are huge, gigantic animals and seem to be, wild and all that, but they have these kind of defining moments where you can get a little bit more of a glimpse into what that animal kind of has, up there in terms of their brain. Another example of using tools, they will pick up sticks with their trunks and scratch themselves sometimes. Fairly, it sounds not that impressive, but using the use of tools is what made humans different at one point in time, for us to be able to figure out how to use tools, and that was a defining characteristic in our evolutionary history. And here we have elephants using paintbrushes to paint on counter canvases. And researchers at the University of Sussex in the United Kingdom have actually discovered that African elephants can distinguish quite well subtle differences in things like human gender, age, and even ethnicity, based on purely on the sound of somebody's voice. So there are some different kind of tribes or different languages that have reflected more in evolutionary history in terms of who hunted elephants in the past, and actually they will respond with fear to those kind of to those languages that of the people that hunted them, in comparison to the language of the people that didn't. And those subtle kind of, that seems like an evolutionary advantage, like a huge evolutionary advantage, where they can kind of recognize, tone and intonation, so they can understand, okay, I'm in danger now, or I'm not in danger. And the whole difference in age, they actually did studies with elephants, and they all said the same lines, of course, so to have like kind of a control variable there, and in terms of the same line that they're saying, across age and gender and whatnot, and for females and for children, the elephants did not respond at all. They would just continue munching on their plant material and whatnot, and we'll get into their diet in just a second. I just think that that's an extraordinary feat of intelligence, and they actually seem to understand human body language. And this was done by researchers. They would have kind of two containers, and they would point to whichever one had food inside, and the elephants would respond to kind of knowing, okay, that them lifting their hand up and having this kind of outstretched finger means that they're pointing over there. And then they would go and find where the food was hidden, and the understanding and the interpretation of human body language, is something that's amiss in plenty of species. These are rare intelligent characteristics, and one thing about the elephants is that they actually seem to show empathy. So empathy is what seems to be an incredibly human emotion, because in animals it is very much, empathy might not be in their best interest, because survival is number one. With elephants, they will comfort each other when distressed. They will stroke one another with their trunks and even kind of have small chirps, so they'll comfort one another. So these are animals that are, have such intricate kind of systems going on, and to be able to show a form of empathy as a a wild animal is something that is hard to comprehend even, right? Because we think that humans are so different in terms of kind of everything, but even elephants, they're able to show empathy. So just an amazing glimpse into their psyche. And they have extraordinary memories. So memories is like, I saved that one for last with intelligence, because I think that's the most well-known sort of characteristic of elephants is their extraordinary memories. They use this memory for remembering routes to watering holes, and they will remember these routes after many, many years and after thousands of kilometers or miles traveling, so over long stretches of distance and time. And they will also form bonds with humans and other elephants, and they can recognize them quickly, even after long periods of separation. So I remember I actually watched a YouTube video of an elephant's trainer that came back after 20 or 15 to 20 years, something such a huge period of time. And the elephant recognized, I don't remember if it was him or her, but recognized him or her almost immediately, and it was a magical moment. The elephant was so happy. And you actually see this among some other species. So I've seen these videos with big cats that were in captivity, that were released back into the wild, that go to hug these owners or trainers or whoever they be, or with monkeys as well, or even like giraffes, stuff like animals like that. So we can see that a lot of them have this ability to recognize fairly quickly, which is awesome. I think that's so awesome. And let's move on past their intelligence, but that is kind of the staple of elephants, is their incredible intelligence. They actually have matriarchal social groups, okay? Matriarchal social groups are more uncommon than they are common among species. It seems that the majority of species go with this male centric kind of hierarchical structure. We've done a few primate episodes now, and that is the norm, of course, with the exception of the bonobo. They also have a matriarchal dominated system. So matriarchal just means that it's female led. The group is led by females. And talking about males now, so elephants can actually be very dangerous. They are, they can be gentle giants, of course, but there is an adaptive kind of reason as to why they should be dangerous or aggressive to some degree, because during kind of male competition, when they're trying to fight for the females, the males will experience huge spikes in testosterone, massive spikes of testosterone of a factor of about 60 or more, and that prepares them for competitions with, or for females rather. And this condition of heightened testosterone can last actually up to about 2 months, around 60 days. So there actually are slightly different. You can spot the difference between an elephant that is currently undergoing huge spikes in testosterone and one that is not. Like, they hold their head up a little bit higher, or their ears are slightly raised, and these will obviously be aggressive, because they have huge spikes in their testosterone, and they just want to fight everything. So, you don't want to stand in an elephant's way. I forgot what they called it. I think musth, must or something. That's what it refers to in this heightened state of testosterone activity. So you don't want to get into an elephant's way when he's primed, ready to go to fight other males. I'm just going to take a quick drink of my tea here. Oh, wow. Okay, very good. And elephants eat plant material, including grass. You have leaves, woody parts of trees and shrubs. You have flowers and fruits, if they can find any, of course. And this always amazes me how much food some animals eat. An adult elephant actually eats, on average, about 50 tons a year, which is about 150 kilograms of food a day. So that is like 330 or 320, pounds of food a day. these are very large animals and they have to sustain that size and that weight. So 150 kilograms of grass and leaves and woody parts, flowers, fruits, that is a lot of food. And this is because African bush elephants weigh around 6,000 kilograms. For you people that go with pounds out there, it's 13,200 pounds. And they are about 3.2 meters or 10 foot 5, okay? All right, 10 feet, 5 inches tall. Huge, huge animals. When we talked about the distinction between Asian and African elephants, we know that the size is different, and the male Asian elephant actually weighs about 2,000 kilograms less on average, which is about, they have about 4,000 kilograms, so that's like 8,800, or not 8,800, yeah, 8,800 pounds, and they are on average about 2.7 meters or about 9 feet tall. So 9 feet tall is still taller than any human being ever, in the history of humans so far. But humans are getting taller over time. It seems as if that we've been getting a lot taller. I don't know if we're ever going to be 10 foot 5 or 9 feet, but humans are getting taller. Baby elephants weigh around 100 kilograms on average. So, that's about 220 pounds. So there's a lot of football players that are 220 pounds. So you have a fully adult football player being the same weight as a baby elephant, which is a funny thought to me. So they're heavier than most adult men, and some newborns have been seen that can be as large as 120 kilograms. So that's, like about 250, 255 pounds. And those are figures for African bush elephants. The baby elephants of other species are smaller. They're not going to be that much smaller, but they all are going to be smaller, because the Asian elephants, when they're adults, are 2,000 kilograms on average less than African elephants, and the babies are called calves. So calves is a fairly common term for among a few species of infants. So it's the same for camels and bison and moose and giraffe and even reindeer. And we'll talk quickly about the gestation of animals. Gestation just means how long animals are pregnant for. So as you know, humans are at around 9 months is that average. But humans actually have a very short gestation period relative to many other animals. And the reason we do that is because it's almost every human being is delivered prematurely to a degree. Not in the traditional sense that we say a baby is born premature, but evolutionarily we give birth earlier, a little bit prematurely, because we have large heads and we need to kind of exit, into the world before we have a very too large a head to kind of get out there. But with elephants, they actually have the longest gestation period of any animal so far that we know of. And it's about 22 months. So Asian elephants have a gestation period of around 18 to 22 months. Elephants will typically only give birth 2 or 3 times in a decade, and the young elephants will kind of depend on their mother for milk and whatnot for a few years. So 22 months of gestation. So that's 9, 18. That's a little bit over 2 times the amount of time that they're carrying their young. Let's talk about their tusks. Okay, so their tusks, defining characteristic of the elephant, and they're actually hugely elongated upper incisor teeth that are embedded in the elephant's head, and they use it for a variety of different reasons. So they'll use it to dig, for water, or maybe get bark from trees, or other kind of food. Of course, when these animals are riled up with the males and they're doing competition, the tusks are used as weapons in battle to that degree, and also as a courtship aid. So when you have a very long and huge tusks, that elephant will be more attractive to a female because they're perceived as strong and having really good genes to carry on the that elephant's name, right? And I think this is super interesting. So just like humans are right-handed or left-handed, humans are actually known to use one tusk more than the other. And this favored appendage is often referred to as a master tusk and often will appear more worn than the other tusk. So just like human beings, where we have dominant hand and non-dominant hand, well, some people are ambidextrous, and that's something that I'm actually working towards. A fun little thing you can do is, just try the next time you brush your teeth, try brushing your teeth with your left hand instead of your right hand. Or if you're left-handed, try brushing your teeth with your right. It's very interesting how your brain it's like doing a completely new task. It requires you to focus pretty hard, but it actually will help out with a few things. So, for example, if you play maybe piano, and you're right-handed or you're left-handed, using your other hand in tasks will actually help with what you're doing on the piano, with that non-dominant hand. So, I just think that's very cool that they have tusk dominance. Very interesting kind of characteristic. And African elephants have a lifespan of up to 70 years in the wild, but kind of non-characteristic to normal or to average kind of stats. They don't live very long in captivity. And why that is, I mean, these are very large animals. They require, room to move around. And in captivity, it seems that their living conditions are not as good as they could be. But Asian elephants have a shorter lifespan of around 48 years. So African elephants kind of have a leg up in terms of size and in terms of lifespan and whatnot. And both African and Asian elephants, as we said before, are female-led. So they have these very tight-knit social groups, which has a dominant matriarch, so the leading female, and her female offspring, and the other female they have female relationships between each other and with their calves. And actually, a group of elephants will sometimes just allow a random stranger to kind of join them, and they just live in peace together. And living in groups has that evolutionary advantage because it makes individuals safer, and because females don't have to depend so much upon their survival and their young survival, that they can actually focus more on teaching the young and caring for them in a loving way. And one more thing in terms of this is actually our last fact. There were so many facts, I had to go a little bit quicker this time because I could talk all day about elephants. That they have been seen to recognize themselves in mirrors. So this is for us it's a normal thing, but this is actually an incredible of self-awareness. So that's a step towards consciousness in a way, self-awareness, being able to look at a mirror and say, that is me, and recognize that is me, is something that is lost in so many species. Well, it's not lost because they never had it in the first place, but it's a characteristic that a lot of them don't have. And elephants, in one study, an Asian elephant called Happy, it's a good name, repeatedly touched an X painted on her forehead while looking in the mirror. So she knew that she was looking at her own reflection, So she saw in the mirror, okay, I have something on my forehead, and actually went to go touch it. So that shows a huge indication of self-awareness. And most animals will assume in a reflection, assume the reflection is actually another animal, and they will go and look for it, on either side of the mirror, or go behind it, or whatnot. There's actually a very funny video online on YouTube that shows animals kind of, somebody just put a mirror in the middle of a forest, and all these different kinds of animals, big cats and birds and gorillas would just go and see the mirror and try to charge at it and try to a fight kind of, and it's just so funny to watch. But elephants can have been seen to be kind of more self-aware, which is amazing animals. And we're gonna get into the last. So just for you new listeners out there, I always like to end the podcast with a little fact about where maybe the name originated. Maybe there's some history to it. Sometimes it'll be simple, sometimes more complicated. So that's how I always like to end the show in a kind of a fun, interesting way. So the word elephant is actually derived from the Greek word elephas, which means ivory. So those of you that don't know, ivory is actually that hard white material that they get from tusks. So or like the teeth of animals and whatnot. But that's kind of why they were kind of named after ivory. Of course, we know now that it is very unethical to kill elephants to get this material from their tusks, or just poach animals or poach elephants for their tusks. It's I believe illegal all over the world. I don't know if there's a part of the world that it is legal, but of course, keeping these animals alive is an important kind of conservation effort, because these animals are so amazing, largest land mammals on the world, and some of the most intelligent after, of course, the great apes. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I sure did. I loved learning about the African elephant with you guys. If you're still awake or if you're sleeping out there, thank you so much for listening. If you have any, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, you can send me an email at relaxwithanimalfacts@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can follow it. This is mainly on Spotify still. You can share it with a friend. Who knows? Maybe someone else wants to relax with some animal facts. So you can share it. You can do whatever you like. And again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And I will see you guys next time with the next animal. Take care.